Well, I am rather busy.
Now he's going to move like right along to McGregor. That's his whole life, you know.
All right, so as promised, this is the first non-alien episode of The X-Files.
Yeah, and it was a little shitty.
You didn't like this one?
I did not like this one because, well...
Oh, boy.
Okay, well, no, here's the thing. Like, I liked a lot of it. I really just don't like Eugene Toombs. I think he was a shitty villain. It felt very poorly defined. His power is he sort of stretches or something and eats livers for some reason. I can't tell if I think a lot of it had to do with it wanted to sell him as this inhuman monster. I mean, the sheriff puts him with genocide and the Nazis, and really to me, he's a wild animal. I guess that's where, now all of the stuff that was not Eugene Toombs, I really liked. I liked all of the interpersonal drama with her and her, friend, and, the burgeoning of her relationship and friendship with Mulder, and all of those things I thought were excellent. I think just an episode like this is as good as its villain, and I didn't think the villain was that effective.
I like Eugene Toombs a lot.
Okay.
I think that...
Well, sell him to me. I'm sorry you feel so deflated.
No, I'm not deflated. I'm trying to think of a way to do this. I think that if my one piece of advice for you with the X-Files would be to not worry so much about why things are happening. And not focus so much on, like, because I can see your point that Eugene Toombs is an undefined character. We don't really know why he's doing this, but part of the thing of the X-Files is that that's going to be the case for a lot of the episodes.
But I guess what I'm saying is I can appreciate part of that. I can appreciate that. I guess I didn't find the monster scary, and I think to a degree, this kind of an episode depends on whether or not you find the monster scary. If you don't find him a compelling and scary villain, then you're watching people get menaced by, a guy who says like 3 words and just glowers weirdly.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess,
I don't know. I guess I'm worried because this is like thought of as like the first like classic episode of the X-Files.
Really? Because I really liked Conduit. I think.
Conduit is less good.
Because Conduit to me was actually about something.
I think you're going to get very different things out of this show.
Okay, well,
which is probably fine. That's one of the reasons that we do this.
It is a good thing. It's
I don't know. I mean, I think that Eugene Toombs comes back. I'll just say that.
Okay. And maybe he's better off in his next appearance.
Maybe. We'll see. I mean, I think that one of the things about this show in general is that it's only as good as the episode, which is kind of a tautology, but this is a show that is dependent on the procedural, at least for a large part of the first season, and they do move away from that a lot in later seasons. It is not as much of a procedural,
okay,
and also it does really depend on whether or not you like Mulder and Scully and like their dynamic and their relationship.
And I do want to stress, I like the Mulder and Scully stuff in this episode. Like I said, if you had replaced Eugene Toombs with a better villain, I think I would have really liked this episode.
I mean, there are things about... I mean, part of the reason why I think this episode is looked on so fondly is because, like I said, it is the first episode that sort of, broadened the concept of the show and did make it not about aliens and not about UFOs. Yeah. And, like I said last week when we talked about the first 2 episodes of the X-Files, that was a real concern on the part of Fox executives and all those, kind of people where was this going to be the UFO show? And, and Conduit obviously didn't help that. But it is the kind of thing where maybe I like this episode more because I've seen it so much. Yeah. I mean, maybe looking at it, never seeing it before, I wouldn't like it as much. I don't know. I mean, I can see your point that Toombs is kind of an ill-defined character and maybe he's not that scary, but at the same time, I don't know that he's supposed to be. I guess,
again, scary, interesting. His superpower is he stretches. Like that's
Well, it's not really about Eugene
Yeah.
Toombs as much as it is about the mystery, and I
Yeah,
think that
and the mystery-
central to the concept of the X-Files as a show is the mystery,
and that could be part of it. Is that I thought the solution to the mystery wasn't as compelling as the mystery itself.
yeah, I mean that I could certainly see that. I mean, I think that setting aside Eugene Toombs and setting aside what his whole thing is. I mean, part of the reason why I think this episode is so good, like I said before, is the Mulder and Scully stuff, and is also the fact that the show is starting to create them as a discrete entity against the world.
Yeah,
and
which I on the one hand, in both of these episodes, and I know this is part of the era that it was made, it seems like it's lived in a little too quickly. In other words, people know of Mulder and Scully already when they've really worked on 2 cases together. She hasn't been, with him for that long. There's a part in the next episode where she says, "Oh, this looks like an X-File," which sounds like a little too fluent for her experience in the X-Files so far. Things like that. But that said, again, this is 1993. I know why it's why it's handled that way, and to the episode's credit, it sells that. I mean, I think it's very interesting to see the way that other people are reacting to Scully at this point, because we talked a little bit about how she's treated as a woman, and the answer is, at least at the FBI, so far, it's not a thing. They're not, everybody who knows her seems to think of Scully as somebody who is wasted in this assignment. Her friend thinks that, everybody wants to, they're giving her time on this case because they know if she helps solve it, it's a very nice feather in her cap. If one of them gets, if her friend from the episode gets promoted, he's gonna take her on as his assistant or something like that very quickly. That's how the deal making is going to work. Everybody seems to think that Scully deserves that, and by the end of the episode, she's recognizing that the politicking is not why she joined the FBI, and it's not why Mulder joined the FBI either.
Of course, that's part of it. If you want to get anywhere,
yes.
And I know. I think that for Mulder, certainly, why he became an FBI agent, we don't really know at this point. And obviously, Conduit will go more into his background a little bit, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But it seems to me that I mean, the question for you, I guess, is Mulder's obsession with the X-Files is less of a job and more of a calling.
Yeah.
And Scully is. Do you see that Scully is already starting to come along on that ride? Well, whereas people like Tom Colton, her a colleague from the Academy, are more career-minded. They're more looking at this as a way to get a house and a car, and
I mean, I said last week something about the glamour of the FBI, and you laughed a little bit. But Colton is gunning for the glamorous part of that. Yes, when you're on the ground, his job day to day right now kind of sucks, but he knows that his friend who topical reference got lucked into the World Trade Center bombing again, which is something that we, especially post 9/11, think of as a horrible thing, but he thinks of as, damn it, I wish I was on that case. That was solely a career move for him. I mean, there's the line that when they're at the crime scene and he says to Scully, whose side are you on? And she's a little horrified and he's like, the victims, I think for her at the end of the day, what she is, career, whatever, aliens, whatever, that all doesn't matter. All she really cares about is, you get the sense she has become a FBI agent because she feels this is the best way to help people. People have died because of this. People are threatened because of this. She wants to catch the killer in order to, in a way, avenge the victim or get justice for the victims. Mulder doesn't have the exact same motivation, but I think one of the taglines for the show, "The truth is out there," I think that's Mulder's goal. Mulder is looking for the truth, and the truth happens to line up with justice for the victims a lot easier than getting my career ahead. And so I even if You know, Mulder wants to prove the existence of aliens and conspiracies and all of those things. That's what truth is for me. Scully is interested in that insofar as it will give victims dignity and will help people, but, you know, she also just wants, you know, again, I think that's where so her goals and Mulder's are aligning, and they understand each other. She recognizes that if she is going to be solely on the side of the victims, on the side of helping people, then she is going to be stuck in the basement because she's not going to say the politic answer.
Well, I think that's all true. And I'm glad you're picking up on the fact that they both sort of have very, I think, real and altruistic reasons for what they're doing, why they're doing it. I mean, Scully is at heart a scientist, and part of the reason why I think she is so open already to Mulder's theories is because she realizes that Mulder is not just fitting the facts to an agenda. He is not, I mean, he certainly comes up with sort of weird theories about stuff that are unfounded by the evidence sometimes. Yeah, but also, I mean, I think that she realizes that Mulder he's looking at this and saying, this doesn't make sense. Like, he likes the mystery of it, and Scully likes looking at the mystery and figuring out where the science is going to take her. And I think that both of them work complementary to each other in that way.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking about this bit at the beginning of the next episode where, you know, he uses his justification as this tablet, and she immediately says, well, he wouldn't just use that. Like, he has some other... At this point, she trusts him enough, and then he does show her the chain of logic that got him to realizing this is something worth investigating. I mean, there
is a part to Mulder as well where I think that he is showing off a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, he obviously is extremely intelligent, and Scully is as well, of course. You know, I think to some degree Mulder is a little dismissive of everyone else around him. Tom Colton especially. I mean, I think that Tom Colton in the episode he's less of a character and more of an obstacle. And he is there to remind us of how smart Mulder is and to let Mulder show off a little bit.
Well, I think Mulder is dismissive of everyone else as kind of a defense because everyone is dismissive of him. Again, listen to...
Well, yeah,
well,
but
listen to what his background turns out...
There is an arrogance to Mulder, though.
Oh yeah, but I think it's one born of isolation. In other words, you know, he's recruited out of college as this. It turns out he's a brilliant serial killer profile. There's the implication that with his abilities, he could have ridden his ticket anywhere. And then he begins to dig up into UFO stuff, assumedly as a response to his, you know, what happened to his sister. And there is a degree of Mulder to where he sees all of the evidence, it connects for him, everything makes sense, and everyone thinks he's crazy, so therefore, I must be the only sane one. I'm the only one smart enough to actually cut through the bullshit, and part of his respect for Scully is coming from the fact that she's seems to be the only other person who's not just making a joke. I mean, when Colton says, oh, so is it Little Green Men, he's making fun of, you know... Mulder, but
Mulder makes fun of him right back
because Mulder is somebody who takes this stuff seriously and you know Mulder knows everything there is to know about UFOs. As if we agree that this is a legitimate subject, it's something that he has a doctorate in, you know, and so Colton is making the dumbest thing ever. You know,
I mean, I think there to some degree, you know, if Mulder was alive, you know, if this show had been taking place 20 years later, you know, you almost seem like Mulder be on Reddit calling people sheeple. Like, that seems to be like his kind of personality type.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that it's one of those things where he respects Scully because she is willing to go on the journey with him, and she is willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Now,
and in a lot of ways, she does kind of, again, conduit. She is kind of a conduit between Mulder and the superiors at the FBI. Is able to hang out in both worlds, even though it turns out that she prefers being in Mulder's.
I mean, you know, that's true, but I think that you know, key to that in Squeeze is, as the evidence mounts that Eugene Toombs is something else besides just a random serial killer, we don't know exactly. Yes, I to some degree I agree with you that the whole liver eating thing is a little underbaked.
It just seems like they picked a bunch of stretches and eats livers and is immortal. Like they just picked 3 random scary killer things.
I think it's a little more thought out than that. But I think that you kind of have to go with the fact that this is not a hard science fiction show, right? Like it's just going to be a little loosey goosey sometimes. And
I'm fine with loosey goosey. I just would have rather they had a more coherent theme.
Well, I mean, it's, but I think that, and certainly some of it is a little workmanlike. I mean, I think that the, sort of horror movie aspects of it are just kind of very workmanlike. And obviously they're just doing those angles and stuff and not really showing what's going on to be as scary as possible, and it's kind of something that they maybe move away from a little bit, down the line. I mean, I'm not saying that the show is as good or as well constructed or as sort of like it hasn't come into itself yet.
Again, I thought it was a good episode, just needed more work on its monsters. But
I think that where this is really coming from is Mulder's looking at this and he is immediately picking up on the fact that there's a weird thing about the vent in the office, and that takes him to the fingerprint, and that takes him to this thing, and that takes him to that thing, and then they capture Eugene Toombs, and then they get his fingerprint, and then he stretches it out, and Scully believes him in as much as she believes the evidence. She doesn't really have an explanation for it, and I think the difference here is that Mulder takes the evidence and extrapolates out a theory that may or may not be correct. And Scully looks at the evidence and she says, okay, I buy this. I buy that their fingerprints match, but she is still, she's not really in the business of theorizing an answer to this that is outside the realm of what she knows to be true. Whereas Mulder is interested, as he says, in extreme possibilities.
And I think a lot of her poking hole, she's very good at poking holes in Mulder's theories. And I think a lot of that is her even playing devil's advocate to him. She may not necessarily, she may believe him that, very quickly that, okay, there's an immortal serial killer, but nobody else is going to believe us. So this is what they're going to say about this. And this is how they're going to view this evidence. And this is circumstantial. And this could be a coincidence. There, in a way she does, Mulder likes starting something and he likes coming to the answer, and it's aliens. It's an immortal liver eating thing, the end. Let's go to the next one. And she's the one who's saying, well, we need to be a bit more meticulous about it. We need to, it's, between us, that's one thing, but we need to prove this to the larger world because
she, I mean, to borrow a 21st century expression, Scully is understanding of the optics of the situation. She realizes that, like you said, they can have these conversations between the two of them, but when it comes to presenting something to, their higher ups in the FBI, they need to be a little more circumspect about it. And they need to really, the way that Mulder's work is going to gain legitimacy is by meticulous application of evidence in pursuit of the truth. And Mulder seems not that Mulder is taking shortcuts, but Mulder doesn't really seem to understand that, whereas Scully does.
Well, because again, for Mulder, the existence of, we'll call it the paranormal, just to be an umbrella. The existence of the paranormal is a known fact to him, and so all of these things can be the case. It's to you and me living in the real world, to the FBI directors, the thought of a liver eating guy who can stretch himself and hibernates every 30 years, and all of that is patently ridiculous, and we can only find you're giving me a face. I know the FBI really believes in aliens and all of that, but
no, I was just going to say, don't look in my fridge because there's certainly not a human liver in there.
Yum. Ew. You don't know how to cook liver.
I could figure it out.
It's not ridiculous for Mulder to see something and conclude that an alien is at it. I mean, remember that chain of logic from the very first episode, where, all right, well, he's possessing the guy in the coma, and, obviously this is what's happening in Aliens, and Scully's like, yes, 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 and then she laughs because it's ridiculous, and she knows I need to make this story, but for Mulder, that's one that makes sense because of the shit he's seen. Mm-hmm. He doesn't necessarily, you're right, he isn't able to take that step externally because maybe he has been in the basement so long, and he doesn't really care about proving it to other people. I mean, Mulder's interested in the truth because people need to know this, but if they're not going to follow him, well, fuck you, in a way.
Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, we do have to make the point that Mulder is not completely oblivious to the reality of the situation, because there is that line. I think it was in the pilot or the second episode.
Oh, yeah, I'm not crazy. I have depths.
He made friends in Congress, so at least he has some understanding that he needs to protect himself in some way.
In general, yeah.
I think the other thing I want to talk about with this episode is, you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but Scully's gender really being a non-issue by everybody, which, in 1993, was that completely realistic?
It's a deliberate decision, you can tell.
Is it completely realistic now? No. But it is a deliberate decision on Chris Carter's part to make Scully really a true equal to Mulder. And, things that I never really noticed before, like, for example, the fact that she just enters the hole in Toombs' apartment first, without even thinking about it. She is not...
She reaches for her gun immediately when she thinks there's a problem, I thought it was even funny that they have, where she fills the bathtub in. I thought, okay, now we're going to get the cheesecakey thing of her in a bra. And, she just keeps her shirt. Even that I thought was, interesting. And she, she recognizes immediately, shit, something's up. And, again, if Mulder saves her from her predicament, this is going to be a show where they're going to be saving each other left and right. So
exactly.
It's going to even out. Well, I want to kind of pick up that theme in the next episode, because this is, I think the show is trying to have it both ways, and I think mostly successful, in that it can provide an environment in which a woman is treated professionally and, right, and yet which also does acknowledge the problems that women may have in society. The next episode, I think, goes into that a lot.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Well, I think that before we move on to Conduit, I want to make one last attempt to sell Eugene Toombs to you. And
was it the glowy eyes and the hissing?
I mean, yes, he is a collection of weird tropes that don't really fit together. I will give that to you.
Yeah.
And certainly this is not the strongest episode of the show. But I guess my question for you is, setting aside the fact that Eugene Toombs was uninteresting to you as a villain, does this episode work for you in selling the idea of the X-Files as something that is not just going to be about UFOs? Is the concept, do you get at this point that the concept is broad enough to support this kind of episode?
And I want to be clear that, if you take out Eugene Toombs and put a good monster in, this would be a really good episode. Like I said, everything structurally it works. I think there are going to be plenty of episodes where there's some monstrous supernatural killer and they've got to figure it out, where the monster is
less than you think.
Well, where the monster is cool and interesting and, a little scary or compelling or something. Again, I just bounced off the monster in this one. I thought it was stupid. I thought the effects were stupid. I didn't think his powers were interesting or scary. It was just he's an Okie who can stretch and eat livers. That's Eugene Toombs.
He's from Baltimore.
Well,
it's not an Okie. What the hell are you talking about? I mean, yeah, I guess I get it, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's as bad as you say it is.
Well, I don't think it's as good as you say it is.
We'll just leave it at that. We can agree to disagree. All right, let's talk about Conduit.
See, now Conduit actually felt like it was about something.
And I don't like it that much.
Yeah, again, I know that X-Files isn't a Buffy-style show in which the monsters symbolize something or allegorical for something. But I think I liked this episode because even though it wasn't a straight allegory for anything, it did have a lot of resonances for the for how victims can respond to crimes or being victimized in any way. I think that the character of Ruby, who is barely in her own episode,
the episode is not about Ruby. The episode is about Mulder's sister.
No, it's about both of them in a way. It's about women.
I disagree.
It's about women disappearing. I think about all of the subtext surrounding Ruby. The entire episode is talking about what kind of a girl Ruby is, right? They're talking about, she was with some biker or other. It's when she is missing, even the sheriff says, Ruby was a bad girl. This is about Ruby is, everybody understands that Ruby is the kind of girl who is going to meet the wrong guy, get sexually assaulted, and possibly killed. And that's it's sad, but that's the way of things. Like I said, the show is very aware of, the ways that women can be victimized in certain ways. And the end of the episode deals with how does a victim of something, of anything, how do you respond to that? And I think Scully and Mulder wish for, what a victim should do is speak out about that, be open about that, make it clear that this is what happens. This is, and yet her mother, is all she says is, well, as far as I was concerned, she was in the back of a Harley. Now she's going to be home and fine and, go to church and stuff like that. Like that's, I don't know. I found that subtext to be very much a little more interesting than maybe the plot of the episode, maybe. But,
well, I think that
Mulder is trying to save his little sister. He's trying to save a girl who has been victimized. And I think this reminds me of some more real world ways in which young women are victimized, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think that there's a couple things here. I mean, for the show itself, talking about Samantha is a way to connect the sort of overarching mystery of the show to the personal a little bit, and to give Mulder sort of grounding as a character who, really has a personal stake in this sort of thing, and that's why he is so interested in finding Ruby. I mean, I think Scully's interested in the case because this is a crime has been committed, and she wants to help. I don't know. My problem with Conduit is that I don't think it's focused enough. I don't think it's sort of a grab bag again of UFO cliches. We don't really get a good answer to what happened to Ruby. Not that that's necessarily that important, but I think what's important is that we don't find out what happened to Ruby. We never get to hear the story of her victimization. Well, but I think that it's important because of the two different attitudes that Ruby's mother and Mulder and Scully have towards Ruby's disappearance. They wanted to talk to Ruby and find out what happened. Ruby is sort of uninterested in that only because she's just gotten back from a place and she doesn't know where the hell she is, and her mother is not interested in it because. What does it matter where she was?
Well, because the mother was ridiculed for telling what happened to her. Again, this is, you want to talk about people feeling shame after they've been sexually assaulted, feeling like people are not going to believe them. Again, the mother is reacting exactly as somebody who spoke out about violence done to her and wasn't believed and nothing happened to it. And the guy didn't, even go to jail. So, I would rather my daughter not go through that. We'll at least deal with that. And I think, Mulder and Scully, Mulder especially with his sister, is somebody who is not willing to just say, well, this is what happens. Sometimes, a girl will meet the wrong guy and get killed by him and, it sucks, but that's the way of the world and she should have, protected herself and, the wages of sin is death. Mulder and Scully are the ones who are saying, no, that's not how it goes. This was something that was done by something else, something in a way evil, if we want to use the last episode's word for it. Evil happens, and it is us as the people who represent law to speak out for the victims and to make sure that the people who do this are punished and that this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, but what does it mean that there's no one to punish? I mean, I think that like,
well, how do you punish rape culture?
Yeah, but you punish a rapist. I mean, I think that there's that's kind of the larger question of the episode is that, there is nothing to punish. There is no resolution here because they don't know what happened to Ruby. And yeah, maybe she was abducted by aliens. Maybe she wasn't. Who knows?
Maybe she was abducted by that biker gang that showed up at the end.
Maybe, we don't know. We don't know.
I think I like that there is an entirely mundane and plausible explanation for most of this episode.
Sure.
Now, of course, it's the X-Files. It's aliens. We know it's aliens, but...
Well, maybe it's not. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I guess that for me, I'm not, I don't think that I don't think you can really make a strong connection between Ruby and Samantha because, of course, Samantha was like an 8-year-old girl.
Yeah, but there's a connection between Mulder and the little boy. Mulder knows that this is going to be a boy who is going to be or at least, I mean, he's certainly projecting a lot, but I think Mulder is seeing this boy and knowing he's going to be obsessed with his sister. This is going to ruin him in the same way I've been a little ruined. I mean, I think yes, the ages don't really match, but I don't think that's interesting at all.
It's not even that the ages. I mean, I think that if you're talking about, rape culture and Ruby is sort of, all that kind of stuff, I mean, I don't think it's incidental that Samantha is an innocent in all this. Yeah. I'm not saying that Ruby deserved what happened to her.
But I was say, do we know if do we know to what degree Ruby is or is not an innocent?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with what she's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that what
Exactly.
I'm getting at is it's the culture is telling her that's what really is the problem.
Yeah, and I think in both cases, Mulder is saying, there is this truth about UFOs and aliens, and they are taking people, just as there is such thing as rape culture, which exists and is taking people. And again, I think there is a nice parallelism in this episode between Mulder and Samantha and Binary Boy and his sister, even if the circumstances are somewhat different. Otherwise, it's just two stories mashed into an episode together.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you're reading something into the episode that you want to see.
Well, I feel like you read something good into Eugene Toombs, so
because I don't. This episode is really messy. Like I don't think it really knows what it's trying to say, and it's got the thing about the boy who is reading stuff off the TV.
Yeah, he has a certain truth, and he's being persecuted for that truth, just as Mulder has the truth about aliens and is persecuted for that in his way.
Yeah, but it's come on. And then also it's got the whole thing about the weird wolves, the white wolves. What is that about?
Well, they just see a body in the forest. They're scavenging.
Who's that body? I don't.
That's the body of her boyfriend,
right? But it's there's connections here that I think that the show is really interested in trying to construct interesting visuals more than it's trying to, in this episode at least, trying to make them all gel together.
I don't know, it gelled together for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just not in the same way that I was not able to convince you of Squeeze's potential. I'm not really convinced of Conduit's potential. To me, it just feels like a grab bag of UFO stuff that doesn't really ever work. And
see, to me, it was.
And I guess also for me, the context is that they do these kind of episodes that are relevant to the mystery of Samantha's disappearance much better later. This does feel to me like they're still not really sure what type of show they want to be. Do they want to be a sort of mystical exploration of the truth? Do they want it to be a procedural mystery show? Do they want it to be a buddy cop show? They still don't really know. Do they want it to be a UFO show? They don't really know. And so it's all just kind of a grab bag of stuff to me that individual scenes in this episode feel like they're coming from different shows.
Okay. Well, I disagree. I can see them doing this type of episode better, but I thought it did it very well. Again, if the Samantha stuff isn't, if we don't learn anything new about Samantha, fine. Maybe they don't even know anything.
I'm glad you have that attitude, by the way.
Well, for right now, I know it's going to be one of the central parts of Mulder's character, but I think at this point it's possible they just. What we have in this episode is all that they thought about that. They probably, I don't know if they had an idea where she is or not or what exactly happened, but, I took this to be less about Samantha and took that more as an underpinning for this case because I found this case interesting.
Yeah, I feel like it's, for me, and I'm trying to put this into a context, of course, because I have seen the whole show, that they're still not really sure what type of show they want this to be. And I just feel like this episode is trying to do too much and is not really doing a deep enough exploration of any of these things. And so, I don't know if it's because they thought maybe they weren't going to get renewed. Who knows? But there's much more of an effort on the show's part to construct some breathing room in these stories when they were a big hit. And the show is still very unsure of itself, and it feels like it's unsure of itself in this episode.
Well, again, I can tell it's the fourth episode, sure.
Right. And
But that doesn't, dismiss the fact that I got a lot out of it.
Oh, no, I'm not dismissing that you got a lot out of it, for sure.
And the fact that the ending of this episode is the one which gives, I think, a further resonances to that I want to believe line.
Well, I think that certainly the episode, I'm not saying I don't like the episode. I just think it's messy. And, to me, for example, the Conduit stuff with the kid and him being able to, understand the television, and then the NSA comes in. And it's just drop that. It doesn't need to be in the episode at all. And
I agree that wasn't the best part of it, but there is a bit of clusterfuck in this episode that I do appreciate.
it almost felt like the episode like was short, and they like had to construct some scenes to make it longer, because like there's that whole thing about like, are they actually going to go on the adventure or are they not? I don't know. And it's like takes up the first 3 minutes of the show, and it's like, okay, but why?
But at the same time, I do think, I mean, one of the questions that I had is that even if they're using budget airlines and hotels, they are still getting money in order to go on these adventures. Like what his superiors are. It's suggested that part of the reason that Scully is here is because so that his superiors can get official documentation to start, shooting him down. So, the budget of these little gala vans actually is a question that I have. And so I think it is significant that, it actually does, and you do have Scully who is running interference and who is kind of, Mulder doesn't really document all of his logic apparently, so she's the one who has to kind of translate.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that the opening of the episode is interesting, and it does kind of say something about Mulder and Scully and their different approaches to, basically getting approval for what they're doing. But again, it just feels to me like the episode was a little short, and they had to, like, I'm glad they came up with that scene. It works, but it doesn't really, like if that wasn't there, I don't know that I would miss it that much, like at that kind of thing. And, like, I don't know. I guess I just feel like, I mean, the show is really good at visuals, obviously, and the show is really good at constructing, interesting openings. I mean, the opening of the episode is really strong. I mean, I have a question why someone would, make a whole cup of coffee and then just leave it there for it to shake when the aliens come. But hey, whatever. Like, little things like that.
Yeah.
But,
well, Jurassic Park had just come out, so it was,
That's true. Yeah. But I don't know. I feel like, the episode takes you on a ride, and it's not. There's just something about it that I find unsatisfying.
I guess
it's vaguely unsatisfying in a way that the show is rarely vaguely unsatisfying to me.
See, and I kind of found some of the unsatisfyingness. I thought the ambiguity of the ending actually worked for the episode, because it ends on that line where so the last we see is Mulder in the church, and there's the voiceover of his deep regression hypnosis.
The Catholic Church.
The Catholic. Well,
I will just put that there.
Well, yeah, the church. Are there other churches? What? No, there's weird splinter groups that think they have religion, but oh my god, we're gonna get in so much
Oh, the
trouble.
Protestants are so cute.
I know! It's like they have a religion without any leaders. It's cute. God speaks to us. Yeah, right, sure. We just tell them that.
Where the hell is the giant bleeding Christ? That's what I want to know.
But, with the tape of his, and he's talking about how he, is hearing this voice, so just saying, she won't be hurt, don't be afraid of all of that. The psychologist or whoever is saying, do you believe that? Well, I want to believe. Now, in the 90s, I want to believe, and the truth is out there, were two phrases that were on T-shirts everywhere. And I want to believe in particular meant I believe in aliens, and I'm vaguely edgy about that, even though I am referencing one of the most popular shows on at the time. It was that kind of a thing. It was just alien iconography chic. In context, particularly with religion blaring in the, visual foreground, it turns out to, I guess the word want becomes a lot more significant to me. That becomes the operative word of the phrase. It is about the desire for faith, even though when one is confronted with all evidence to the contrary. In other words, whatever is happening, aliens are kidnapping his sister. It's a fucking terrifying thing. Who would ever believe that everything is going to be all right for that? How would Mulder ever feel whole after this experience that he had? How would he ever?
Yeah, and he doesn't. He's very
exactly.
He's very affected by it and has a lot of psychological trauma by it.
But at the same time, he wants to believe in aliens, in God, in salvation. He wants to believe that he is going to somehow be saved. Now, for Mulder, that means finding out what happens to his sister, restoring her, and that's going to fill the void in him. Now.
Well, because his sister being abducted by aliens is a lot better than her being abducted by like a serial killer who rapes and murders her.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, what's, is aliens a way of acknowledging evil while allowing humanity to remain innocent in a way. In other words, a serial killer, abducting and killing a little girl is a human committing an act of extreme evil, which is something that Mulder, in his time dealing with serial killers, certainly saw some acts of extreme evil that were committed and part of humanity.
Right.
If aliens are doing this, then that's something outside humanity that's visiting evil upon it. Again, I think this show is so far showing some of the evils of humanity and incarnating them in the supernatural. Again, what I didn't necessarily believe that Eugene Toombs was equal to the fucking Holocaust, but
of course, that guy was also 90 years old.
Oh yeah, but I mean, he is making a very clear. I mean, if the parallel isn't sold as well as it certainly the show does believe that there is a certain kind of evil in humanity. And
I think, not to go back to Squeeze, but I think you're overselling the comparison that detective makes to Eugene Toombs in the Holocaust. I think that for him, Eugene Toombs was a very, very small scale representation of the evil that humanity can do.
And there's a metonym. It's
right.
And
so I don't think he actually believes that Eugene Toombs killing 20 people over 90 years is as bad as the Holocaust.
No, I know, and I guess that's the that was. It didn't bother me. I did get where the show was going for that.
But I think that, there's a couple things here. I think that number one, the central mystery of the show, of course, at this point is where did Mulder's sister go? And I think it's not going to be a surprise to you that the answer to that is more complicated than it first appears.
Yeah.
And
I mean, if it's just simple as she was on an alien ship and, she either died or is still there, is not at all, in itself is not that interesting. It's true.
Right. And so I want to say that if there's one redeeming feature of Conduit for me, it is that it very nicely slots into the idea that the answer to the puzzle that you're trying to solve is not always what it seems. Because of course they've got the character of the woman, one of Ruby's friends, who's lying about what's going on.
And who killed the boyfriend.
Right.
Again, there was a murder committed, and it was simple jealousy. I mean, if you want to talk about banality of evil, it was a jealous woman killed her boyfriend because he ran off with another woman and was abandoning her while pregnant. That's about as simple as you can get.
Right. They
about as human as you can get.
Right. They go down those roads of having dead ends and having things not be as they appear. And so that's important for the show. I think the other thing too, and I don't want to talk about this too much because, frankly, it's not really developed until much later in the show's run, but one of the things that is, sort of criticisms around the X-Files or critical analysis of the X-Files really talks about is this idea of Chris Carter as really wanting to explore the sort of like folk culture of America and sort of Americana in general. And, frankly, the show is a little dismissive of it. And so the UFO stuff is definitely a part of that kind of culture. It's also hard for us to talk about because it's almost completely disappeared from culture.
Yeah, and maybe partially as a result of the X-Files. I think we just kind of got, aliens became really popular, and then we just got sick of it, and then it got relegated to just crazy UFO people, corners of the internet conspiracy blogs.
But it's almost completely disappeared in a way that is strange. It's I don't know, it's weird to me. But anyway. I guess the last thing I want to talk about before we wrap this episode up is I think we need to talk about David Duchovny's performance because, we talked a lot about Squeeze in terms of how Mulder and Scully are developing as a partnership and all that kind of stuff and how they really are starting to gel. And, one of the things that I really appreciate about David Duchovny, especially even early on, is I think how well formed the character really is. You like Mulder.
Yeah.
He's funny.
Well, it's interesting because
he's got weird line readings. I mean, like
David Duchovny is snarky, but not in a mid-20 teens snarky. You know what I mean? Like I think we were. I don't remember what you said earlier, but I was thinking like if he were made now, he would be like a House type of character who would be a lot more of an asshole. Like Mulder is sarcastic, but I don't think you can call him an asshole. I don't think you can call him nasty. If he's dismissive, it's coming out of isolation, and I don't think he's going out of his way to be. He's not cruel, and I think that's a very important part to why we like the character.
It's coming out of playfulness.
Yeah, he's for what Mulder does is when somebody makes a kind of a cutting joke about little green men, he's like, all right, I'm going to take what you do and I'm going to escalate it. Oh, is that not what you wanted? Okay, now I'm going to find a really important clue. Like that's Mulder's style. He's not doing it to necessarily, he's not doing it to be cruel, but he's punching down somebody who is being a dick.
Yeah, absolutely. And
which is very early 90s, the guy who's a little too, he is very much an early 90s slick to him, but in a way which isn't, I liked. It felt nostalgic to me.
Yeah, but I mean, that's all in the writing. I mean, the lines that he's saying are the writing. What I'm talking about more is David Duchovny's performance. Okay. And, like his line readings are very strange. I
can't say
I think that there's one early on in Conduit where they're, Scully goes down to the basement office to discuss with him whatever they call it, the form that you put in to go to Sioux City. He's talking to Scully and he leans over and he like whispers to her what he's saying, and it's like that was not in the script. Like he was not told to do that. Like it's little things like that where he has such a well-formed idea of who this person is at this point that it's really impressive, actually, because I think this actually was the 4th episode filmed. So, he's able to project a familiarity with Scully without it becoming sexual or weird.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not to discount Gillian Anderson because she's also doing really good work, but I don't think she quite has a handle on Scully yet.
And I think in some ways the character is supposed to be a little restrained. Scully isn't showing everybody who Scully is quite yet. I'm just thinking, I wonder if he is projecting a bit of Samantha onto Scully. In other words, she's a couple years younger. She's a few years younger than he is at this point. I wonder if he is slotting them into a brother-sister dynamic and we're going to solve mysteries together. Like, I don't know if that is part of their dynamic.
I think that's definitely part of it. Yeah.
It's certainly, he is certainly predisposed to, wanting to team up with a younger woman, because of his desire to see his sister again. An adult Mulder, if Samantha had not been captured, would have been very close with her.
Yeah, frankly, yeah. And also, final thing about David Duchovny is, he can take his shirt off whenever he wants.
Well, yes.
So, all right. Well, I think that's it for this episode of the podcast. If you have any thoughts on either of the episodes we just discussed, please leave a comment on this post for this episode of the podcast at tuninginshow.com. You can check out our Patreon if you would like to support our podcast with some of your money at patreon.com/trekaboutshow. Which, coincidentally enough, also supports our other long-running podcast, Trek About, going into its 18th season. We just released our episode on Star Trek Insurrection, the 3rd TNG movie. So if you want to hear our thoughts about that, just go over to trekaboutshow.com and listen to that.
Actually, it is about 18 seasons if we consider each season of a show. We've done 14 plus 3, 17.
Yeah, I wasn't making a joke. Or maybe I was.
Well, it wasn't funny.
Social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Tuning In Show, all those places. And as always, please leave us an iTunes review for tuning in. It is the best way for new people to find the show, and it makes us feel good. And don't you want to make us feel good? Especially in Trump's America? Yes, you do. All right, next week, we are talking about the Jersey Devil, which is also my nickname for Richard, and Shadows.
Mac, why do you...